As the Israel-Hamas war resumes after the tenuous 7-day truce, let's take a look at what the ground situation is like in the beleaguered Gaza Strip, ground zero of this crippling war. The head of the UN's Palestine Relief Agency, the UN Relief and Works Agency or UNRWA, has warned that the resumed Israeli military assault in the overcrowded south of Gaza may compel many of the 1 million refugees, including 900,000 sheltering in UN buildings, to try and push over the border into Egypt. Following his visit to Gaza, Philippe Lazzarini has urged Israel to think through the consequences of an offensive in the south. In an interview to The Guardian, Lazzarini has said, and I quote, "We already have a staggering human tragedy. We are in a race against time, and already disease is becoming as much of a threat as the bombardment. The combined impact of the bombardment and the siege has already pushed people to the south. Now, if there is fighting there too, there is a higher likelihood that people might wish to flee further south and beyond the border." Lazzarini has emerged as one of the most outspoken UN humanitarian officials in recent weeks, urging Israel to abide by the rules of law and proportionality. Expressing concern about the impact of fighting in the south, he has described the area as completely overloaded after Israel urged civilians in the north of the territory to move south for their own safety. The UNRWA chief says the Gaza Strip was already known as being one of the most crowded places in the world, and now you have the majority of the population that has moved towards the south. So you have the almost complete concentration of the population in half the territory, an area that cannot support such a presence because of an enormous shortage of basic supplies, including water. It simply cannot cater to so many people. Remember, people from Gaza City in the north have been asked to go to the south because they were told the south would be safer. Yet, a large proportion have been killed in the south, he said. He goes on to say, we have 1 million people in UN installations, including 100,000 in the north. They come to seek protection. Their locations are known, and despite that, nearly 100 of these installations have been hit directly or indirectly. And this has led to the deaths, the killing of more than 200 people, and injuries to the tune of 900 at UN installations. Now we are told, or we hear, that people should move further southwest if the offensive takes place in Khan Yunis, but you cannot declare an area safe unilaterally in a war zone. When asked to comment on Israel's argument that an extended ceasefire would leave Hamas entrenched and Israel's security compromised, Lazzarini said Gaza is not Hamas. You have an organization called Hamas, and you have a population, and this population is diverse, vibrant, and cannot be equated to Hamas. It's a population which has lived under the rule of Hamas over the last 17 years. Does it mean that the entire population, half of it are children, half of it were born after Hamas came to power, have to pay the price? It's an equation which has to be addressed by those who made the objective to neutralize or eliminate Hamas. What we are saying is that the objective cannot be at the expense of the civilian population. That is the reason why you have a rule of law, the reason why you have an international humanitarian law. The UNRWA chief has also urged Israel to think of its world standing, saying the longer this war lasts and the more people die in Gaza, there will be a very strong feeling in the region that international humanitarian law does not apply the same for everyone. The further the region will be polarized, and the further we will be from any peace prospect in the future. We should never ever underestimate this feeling, not just in Gaza, but in the region. Lazzarini went on to say, imposing a siege on an entire population seems to me to be a collective punishment. The most difficult concept in international humanitarian law is the concept of proportionality, but we have to be careful not to use this notion to justify the unjustifiable. Personally, I don't see how we can justify, through the concept of proportionality, the killing of more than 15,000 people in 40 days, and among them so many women and children. I don't see how this can be justified through the concept of proportionality and self-defense. By any account, these are staggering figures, and it's a staggering human tragedy. Lazzarini has also pleaded for more than 200 trucks a day to be allowed to cross the Rafah crossing and for more crossings to be opened by Israel. Describing the abysmal and heart-wrenching conditions that Palestinians are currently living in, Lazzarini says, We're hosting 35,000 displaced people, and these people are living in just appalling, unsanitary living conditions. You have sewage water starting to pour into the courtyard of the compound. The doors of the compound were locked just like a closed prison because it cannot host more people. It was shocking. People arrived 30 to 40 days ago and had left everything behind. Most of them have seen their houses and apartments destroyed and are still living in the clothes in which they arrived 40 days ago. Lazzarini goes on to say, I talked to a father who burst into tears when he started to describe the living conditions and how he feels. His family are living in 4 square meters of space, sleeping on the concrete floor. They have no mattress, they have no blanket. They are struggling to have one meal a day, which is primarily canned food or a piece of bread. They're queuing up to get water. They're queuing up for hours to go to the toilets. This Palestinian man told Lazzarini, I feel humiliated, I feel stripped. We feel stripped of our dignity, we feel lost, we feel useless, we feel broken. And his story is a story of almost anyone living in Gaza today. That's what Lazzarini has said in this detailed interview.